Welcome to Transformative Principal. This is episode 17, part 2 of my interview with Fidel Montero. I am your host, Jethro Jones, and I'm so happy you could join us tonight. Today, whenever you're listening to it, that's cool. I'm really excited to finish this conversation with Fidel because he is truly inspiring. I am so fortunate to have been able to learn from him. And as I learn more about him, I become more and more impressed. He really is a great human being and a wonderful leader. You're going to enjoy this episode because he's going to talk about the things that he does at his school to counsel teacher leaders and put them in their areas of strength. What that really means is that he's not afraid to look at how he could do things differently and restructure someone's contract to ensure that they're getting an opportunity to be the best that they can be. That kind of stuff is really exciting to me. He's going to talk about how he evaluates himself and the initiatives that he implements and how he gets feedback from teachers. He's also going to answer my usual questions of what you can do to be a transformative principal, as well as what motivates him that is in his office. One of the great things that I like about what he says in a very general, matter-of-fact way is how he responds when people complain about being overworked. There's no condescension in his voice, and it's just a very great answer that he has. So I hope you enjoy this. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, SaneBox, for supporting the show. You can go to sanebox.com or click on the link in the show notes to get more information about how to make your inbox sane again. If you like this show, please feel free to give me some feedback on Twitter or on Facebook or on iTunes by leaving a review or leaving a review on Stitcher Radio, where you can also listen to this. So Holly Pedersen in EBL, she suggested that I talk to you about how you counsel teachers to their strengths and the skill sets that they have to put them in a better position. That was pretty much all she told me. So I hope you understand how you do that. She said that's one of your great skills.
My great skill. How I counsel teachers and put them in their areas of strength. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd have to talk with Holly in more detail, to understand. I mean, I'm glad she's recognizing something that I'm doing as a positive thing. But I just, what I try to do, I mean, I feel that the role of the principal is really to, you're really trying to maximize people's potential, right? Mm-hmm. And as a principal, unfortunately, you're maximizing the potential of the adults. The teacher's maximizing the potential of the students, and you're trying to maximize the potential of the adults. Right. So to that end, I really have tried to position people and put them in positions here at our school where I could really maximize their strengths, right? So case in point, we didn't have a data analyst here at our school, and there was a teacher here who's really a dynamic, organizer. She really has a passion for data. She is a good thinker. So what I did is I restructured her contract so she became my data analyst, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what she's doing, right? And we're shifting the tide, right? In terms of how we look at data in our school and what type of resources we're utilizing and so forth, right? So that's one example. I mean, we didn't have an instructional coach, right? So I wanted to create a framework for us to have instructional coaches in our school. So through a collaborative effort with EBL, we brought together, we identified a teacher who could become an instructional coach for us, and we became the first high school to have one, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm really trying to empower that teacher so that she's able to, be a real meaningful coach, right? The way we structure our EBL team, I really felt that like our department chairs needed to be, they were going to be department chairs. They really needed to be, sort of curriculum leaders, right? Mm-hmm. So, I merged our department structure with our BLT. I was going to say EBL, with our BLT, and that's sort of become one, right? And we're, I've been deliberate about saying if you're a part of the BLT, you're a team leader, right? You're a school leader. I've hired, through my hiring, I've brought people on with different strengths that I really felt that, hey, you know what, this is something that we could benefit from. With both in the classroom, I felt we brought on some really incredible teachers who I've been really deliberate about selecting in terms of their attitudes and so forth, right? One of my assistant principals, she had 13 years of experience as a high school principal. And when I hired her, I had 2, right? So, in fact, no, I had 1. So, some principals might have been intimidated by bringing somebody on board who, could run circles around you in terms of experience, right? But I was like, man, listen, she can bring some strength to the leadership team that we really could benefit from, and experience. And we've forged a really good relationship, because I think that's the start of any good leadership team, right? And man, I feel that that's been a huge asset for this school, for me personally. So those are all sort of examples, right? I mean, I can, talk about more, right? I mean, creating a professional development team that looks at critically at the planning of our professional development. And I brought in like our media center coordinator, because she's somebody we hired. She came here from Holly's office, Jenny. So Jenny wanted to, EBL thing wasn't working out for her, at least, from a time standpoint. And man, I snatched her up in a heartbeat. And, she's been a huge contributor to our school. So I make sure that she's on committees she's our media center, specialist. But, she plays a critical role, right? I have a team that, does this team of teachers, I call them, they function as sort of, I tell them that they're my third party consulting group, right? That evaluates all the practices that we're doing as a school, right? So I kind of, we adhere to, Michael Barber's philosophy of, Deliverology. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Barber, but he's
I'd love to. Sounds interesting.
He's an English guy who, really great thinker about, school reform. You should look him up, read some of his stuff. But he's got this whole idea, right, that in order for you to deliver a product, a school, outcome, that you have to have a process by which you're measuring, implementation of different initiatives from their infancy to sort of their, when they're being carried out. But as part of that, you need deliverology teams, right, who help with that process, who can give you a non-biased, straightforward, no vanilla sort of analysis, right, of, hey, this is really working well, this is not. So they sort of have been doing that, right? I really have tried to empower teachers by letting them play a critical role in our decision making and have a voice, right, in what we're trying to accomplish. I sort of, set the vision of, hey, this is what we want to do, and then give them some parameters by which they can then come in and work and really contribute and provide insights. I mean, we've organized an advisory period, right, to support the transition of our freshmen, and not just our freshmen, but that's going to be the base for our intervention system, right? And that's been really teacher built, teacher led, with my influence, obviously, but I sort of orchestrated, right? I don't micromanage it.
Right. And
so there's a lot there that I just,
You said a ton. At the end, though, you said you gave them the vision and let them implement it.
Absolutely, yeah.
How they saw best when they came up with ideas that weren't aligned with your vision, you brushed those off, refocused them. Talk about that process.
Yeah, so I mean, like with advisory, right? We started out with a simple premise, right? Hey, we want to provide the best services that we can possibly provide to ninth grade students at our school. So what's out there, right? So part of what they were tasked to do was to actually look at literature, look at evidence of, good practices to support ninth grade students. So I felt that if they did that with a sense of integrity, that we were going to land in the same place, right? And for some of those things, I didn't have the answer because, I'm not an expert in all things education. Right. I mean, there's so much to learn, right? So we sort of walked down that journey together, and as we were discovering things, it was just sort of an organic process that landed us in the same place, right? So I really do believe that when you trust, people, right, when you bring the right people to the table, when you set the sort of the right vision of, hey, this is what we want to try to accomplish, I really believe that you're going to land in the same place. Now, there were some things that we've learned now that we didn't that we sort of took missteps on, like within our advisory. We implemented advisory at the beginning of this year, and we just completed an entire sort of evaluation analysis of it, right? So to learn what's going well, what's not, and so forth. And there's some areas where when we were planning, we just kind of missed the boat, right? And so now we know that we're recharting.
Can you talk about what some of those things were that you missed?
Yeah, so for example, part of our advisory period includes a lesson that the teachers teach the students. So the way the advisory is set up is each teacher is responsible for about 25, 26 students, right? And each teacher across the school has an advisory. And that's their sole role, is to be the adult advocate for them here at the school. They, as we built it into the day so that they can check with their grades, so that kids have time to do homework. That we have a literacy. One of our days is a literacy day where the kids just read, and then one of the days was a lesson where we identified different themes that we wanted to cover with our kids that are not necessarily covered as part of our curriculums, but some things that we felt were important, things that we can tie back to PBIS. So this whole idea of SOAR, right? We're teaching our kids what SOAR is, right? What it means to be safe, organized, responsible, engaged, learning, and so forth, right? So we used that advisory period as an avenue to do that, right? So lessons were part of that, right? The teachers had to teach a lesson. So we had a curriculum team that got together over the summer that developed these lesson plans. Well, what we found, as we implemented first semester, was that we were too structured, that we kind of jumped around with different themes as opposed to having one theme for 1 month or one theme for, 1 quarter. We had way too many themes, right, that we were trying to cover. The engagement that the kids had wasn't really, something that they were connecting with. So anyway, so we learned sort of a lot about these lessons, right, and have now modified them, a semester in, after we've conducted a pretty robust evaluation of the program initiative.
Wow.
So there you go.
That's cool.
And that's all been teacher led. I mean, I feel like I'm orchestrating, right?
Yeah.
There's no way I can do all that on my own.
Absolutely. And that's where the real power comes in, is that if you can be the orchestrator, then you can lead people to do things that are pretty amazing that they couldn't even do by themselves either.
Right.
So, it sounds also like you're trying to help teachers understand that they are more than their title. And it sounds like that's how you get people to have the skills and strengths that they need, is by teaching them that they're more than their title and they can do much more. Have you gotten any pushback from teachers about having to do too much that's not teaching?
Yeah, no question. I mean, I think that's a constant sort of, complaint. I think one of my areas of weakness is that I don't have a lot of sympathy for that type of sort of, complaining, and that, I grew up with a dad who worked, 60 hours a week in the fields, picking cherries, picking, walnuts, sort of very difficult manual labor that, provided food for what these people eat at their homes, right? So, there's very few of them that I think that could keep up with him, right? So when I think of the work he did and versus the work that we do, I think we're very blessed, right, to work in an area where, we have air conditioning in most of our schools. We have heaters, you have a pension, you have good health insurance. And, so when people say I'm being overworked, I think they're misusing that word, because to me, overworked is working, in 100-degree weather with pesticides all over you, with, mud on your hands, mud on your feet. That to me is overworked, So when somebody tells me, that I'm thinking too hard or I have too much to do, I don't have a lot of sympathy for that. And, it's an area that I need to improve on, because I think some people are sincere, right? And they are overworked. But a pattern that, I'm sure you observe too as a school leader, is that your teachers, your champions, right? You're sort of your stallion teachers, your best teachers don't complain about being overworked. They just get things done, right? And when what I try to do is really every time we talk as a faculty, I really try to emphasize, hey, this is what successful organizations do. This is what successful organizations, not just in education, but across, many industries. This is how they get work done, right? They work collaboratively. They have systems in place. They are able to, they understand when they fail, and they have, systems for them to identify that failure. They are open to learning. They're learning organizations. They have constant feedback pools, and they're, so I really try to remind them of that. I try to remind them of why we all sort of went into this profession and what it means to all of us. I try to, use different anecdotal stories to really, drive the point home. And then I also use, concrete empirical evidence to remind them of the work that we do. Mm-hmm. And, I think I'm a pretty approachable, leader. And I think I listen to people when people are just feeling, stressed out, or they have too much on their plate. I listen, and, I try again not to be too reactionary, especially with my bias, right? About what being overworked actually means. So, it's a balancing act. Right now we evaluated, whether people were liking advisory or not, right? And I think we had over 85% of our teachers said, yeah, this is something that we want to do. There's some things that we need to improve, but we really value this, right? And that's pretty significant data, right? Then I can turn around and show to them and say, look, you guys, 85% of you, 90% of you guys really agree with what we're doing. I'm listening to you and I'm hearing you out that, hey, there's some things that we've got to change. But at the core value of saying, hey, we want to have an advocate for every single one of our kids. We want every single one of our kids to be recognized by an adult in our school. Mm-hmm. We're doing that. We're making that happen, right? So, yeah, man. So, I haven't had too many people come in and sit down and say, hey, this is too much. Right. I hear it here and there, but.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've created a way for them to let those frustrations and that feedback come back to you.
Yeah, we do a little. We survey them a lot. We've had focus groups in which they've had, not everybody, but teachers have had the opportunity to sit down and, give us their feedback. And there's obviously all the informal ways, right? But.
Right. That's great. So at the end of each interview, I ask 2 questions. The first one is, what's something that some advice you give a principal today so they can be a transformative principal like you, that they can start doing right now?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, I'm not sure if I'm a transformative principal, I'm just,
from what you've said today, you are.
Man, I'm just a squirrel trying to find a nut, man. What advice would I have to a principal? I feel things that I do that help me do what I do, or, I do several things. First of all, I really try to find balance in my life. I don't let my job define me. Mm-hmm. I have a, relatively successful family, or a successful, I shouldn't say successful family, but successful family life, right? Where, when I go home, I spend time with my kids, I connect with them, I have a good relationship with my partner, with my spouse. And I think that having that balance really helps come to this job and sort of put things in perspective, and you don't get stressed out by the little things. You don't, I think when you have balance in your life, you don't absorb other people's problems, which a lot of people try to, dump on you, right? And so you sort of, and perhaps people might think I'm aloof because I don't sort of go down to the, at the mire, and get caught up with people's issues. And part of that is just because, I try to be supportive of people, but at the same time, they're not my problems, right? They're, I feel bad and I sympathize with people, but part of that is having balance, right? I think if you don't have that balance, then you're taking your work home and you're stewing on it at 2:00 in the morning. And, exercise is a big deal to me, right? And that's a sort of it's a big, and I'm not super stressed out, but it's probably because I do exercise. But it's just a way for me. It's something that I enjoy doing. It's something that, really sort of fulfills me. I read a lot, right? And not just, I rarely do I read just education type, content. I just got done reading about, a programmer who, lost his life, and where the article asked questions about whether, the loss that we have about, digital freedoms and sort of, cost his decision. Yeah. I read an article about, President Obama and sort of his leadership style, in this second term, right? I got done reading an article on the question of whether elephants have a soul. And I'm reading an article or a book on, the President's Club, right? The U.S. President's Club. This is just something I've read, just in the last, week, right? Mm-hmm. So, I keep track of that kind of stuff, right? Because, I try to say, okay, I got to read a couple of articles a week. I sort of set a goal for myself to do that. Mm-hmm. I write, I enjoy the writing process because I think it crystallizes your thinking, and it's just, something that I enjoy doing, right? And those are all things that I do away from my work, right? But I feel that all of those things sharpen my saw, if you may, give me perspective, give me context to, my role as a leader. I have other hobbies, I kind of given you all my hobbies, but, with 4 little kids, that's about all I can do, right? But,
I'm right there with you.
But yeah, so those, I think a good principle, a transformative principle is going to have some of that. I think, when I went to school in the East Coast and I, associated with some of the most successful leaders in urban America, urban education, my director, Arlene Ackerman, she was principal or superintendent of San Francisco School District, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia. My mentor principal was superintendent of New York City and Miami-Dade, right? Wow. So these people, were really at the sort of, as high as you can climb, right? In education in some ways. Miami-Dade had 350,000 kids, right? And he was a superintendent there. Compare that to, 30,000 in Canyons, right? We're talking completely different sort of realities, right? And as these people spoke, right, who were at the tail end of their careers, or at least had experienced a lot, they all came back to this idea of making sure you have balance, right? And making sure that, you have a sound, network, whether it's, if you have a family, then your family being that, if you have loved ones. But I'm a firm believer in that. I think, obviously if I didn't have kids, if I was single, I could probably work more hours. Mm-hmm. But to me, that's not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily be a better principal, right?
Right.
I might push paper a little faster, but I don't think I would be a better principal.
Yeah. But what makes you a better principal is having the balance between every aspect of your life. Not that they're all equal.
Yeah. But like tonight, I won't get home tonight till, 10 o'clock because I'm going to a basketball game after here in a little bit. So that's not balance working out. I started my day at 4 o'clock this morning. So as I speak about balance, here's, I'm working, gosh, what is that? 16 hours, 18 hours today. But, my wife and I, when we sat down and talked about this week, we had a conversation. Hey, Tuesday's going to be a bad day, and we sort of, so we sort of plan for those types of things. 18 hours. Gosh, is that in 19? 44 is 12.
Yeah. 6 more to do.
Yeah. That's nasty.
That is nasty. But sometimes you got to do that. But if you have balance, you can handle doing that occasionally. If you do that every day,
plan
that's
for
not
it.
going to be healthy.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
There you go. That's
That's great. And also echoes what other great principals have said, that they need to have balance as well. The last question is pretty easy. What's something that you have displayed here in your office that is inspiring or reminds you of the importance of the work you're doing?
Well, my family, right? I think, the way I approach my leadership is what type of school would I want for my kids, right? I repeatedly, ask my faculty that same question. What type of school, what type of teacher would you want for your grandchildren, for your own kids? Mm-hmm. And I think if we're not working to that ideal, then we're missing the point. So I think, my family definitely inspires me. I think, if you look around my office, especially my bookshelf, there's a lot of books that have influenced me, more family pictures, sort of cultural heritage type things, great leaders who I glean from. So I think I think I can tell you a story about everything that's up there.
That was a great interview with Fidel. He is an amazing principal, and I am so lucky to have been able to interview him. Please share this podcast with your friends. They can listen to it on Stitcher or on iTunes. Go to transformativeprincipal.com to see all the past interviews that I've done. And Please be sure to retweet and share it out with your friends on social media.